Hey, what's up? This is Ben from WODprep, and today we're going to answer the question, I got injured, what should I do? So if you are someone who does CrossFit or really any other form of fitness and you've gotten injured, we're sorry, but the good news is that this video is going to help you get better. We have 5 steps that we want you to take that's going to help you get over or get through your injury. As you've probably already noticed, I'm here with 2 much more handsome individuals. We have Dr. Joe Camoratto and we have Dr. CJ DePalma. They both work for WODprep. They run a couple different various coaching aspects of WODprep, but they are here to drop some knowledge bombs on us about how to get you through your injury. First things first, we actually have a special download that we want to give to you completely free. If you stick around to the end of this video, I'll tell you exactly where to get it. It is a 5-step checklist to help you prevent injuries in the future. But again, we will share that at the end of this video. So let's dig into step number 1. You're injured. Coach CJ, Dr. CJ, what do I do?
Yeah, so the first step is always don't panic, okay? Injury is very common. It happens to all of us. We've all been there. It's probably going to happen again at some point in your life, and we know that it's going to get better. We heal. The body is really good at getting better. Tissues heal. You know, the situation improves over time. Okay, so the way that you react to the initial situation can definitely play a big role on how you overall respond to it. Right? If you're really panicked and scared, your pain levels can increase, because we know pain, without getting too deep into it, pain has a lot of factors into it, and your belief patterns play a big role into it. Okay, so we don't want to panic, right? We want to understand that injury is common, pain is also very common, right? Everyone at some point in their life has pain, and most of the time, like 99%, it goes away in 6 to 8 weeks.
We've all stubbed our toe. Right. We've all stepped on a Lego at some point. We've all done something that at the time feels like this will never heal. Right. I will never get better. Right. And in the case of stubbing your toe and stepping on a Lego, it's pretty much gone within the next few minutes. And then some injuries that we might get inside of, let's say, a CrossFit gym could linger a little bit longer, but not panicking. Let's give them like a bad example, or a bad example. It's like, all right, I'm doing some push jerks. I hear a massive crunch in my left shoulder and it feels a little weird. What would panicking look like?
I heard did you guys hear a pop? I heard a, oh, that's not going to be good. Oh.
Yeah, panicking would be, having a big emotional response. Going right to the emergency room for something that isn't, we're going to get into, assess the situation in a minute, but that overreaction, right? These things happen, pops happen, crunches happen, whatever, and most of the time they aren't that serious. If we look at the true numbers behind it, usually the severity of it is relatively low on the spectrum of a small injury to a large injury.
Sure. I mean, unless your arm is dangling by a small vein and disconnected from your body and blood is spewing everywhere, chances are it's not that serious of an injury perhaps, but either way, the first thing that we should do is take a deep breath, don't panic, and then we're going to move on to step number 2.
Assessing the situation is taking a step back and saying, is there anything hanging off of me? Did I have a blunt force trauma? Did I drop something on myself? Is a joint pointing in the direction that it's not usually? Bruising, any severe loss of range of motion? These are the things that we usually look for that very rarely happen. So taking a step back, assessing the situation and seeing where to go from here is going to be a huge number 2 for us to make sure that we don't go back to number 1, which is panic.
Okay, so let's say that in this hypothetical situation, I put that bar overhead, something feels weird, I feel the crunch, I bail, okay, and the bar's on the ground, I'm taking deep breaths, I'm still feeling some lingering shoulder pain, I'm trying not to panic. What would assessing the situation look like?
Assessing the situation would look like, all right, everything's intact, I don't have any severe pain, going through a range of motion assessment to see, can I move, is there anything that doesn't feel really right to me, and then kind of going back and saying, I think that I can continue or not.
Sure, cool, awesome. So we don't want to panic. We want to make sure we assess the situation, looking for some major red flags that could potentially signal more trauma, but for the most part, we're not going to have that, especially unless a barbell is like impaled into your body, or you have a finger that's pointing in the wrong direction. The chances of you having like true trauma in a CrossFit gym, maybe if you fell from a 15-foot rope, that could be different, but true trauma from like a barbell lift is pretty low. Yeah. So once we've not panicked, we've assessed the situation. Step number 3, what do we do now?
Yeah, so we've got injured, we've assessed the situation, and now we have to decide, based on our assessment, what we do next. And so the next is we
stop working out completely for the next 10 weeks.
Correct.
Coach, yeah, I don't do jerks. hurt my shoulder 10 years ago on one jerk. I've just avoided anything shoulder related ever since.
We're being completely sarcastic. What should we actually do?
We don't want to go into this complete state of rest, and that's what the most common advice is during injury from most medical professionals, because it's the easiest and it's the most accessible thing that you can do. And usually our symptoms generally go away with time, maybe not specifically rest. But what happens is if we're doing nothing for an extended period of time, then when we start back to doing whatever it may be, it's going to feel bad. Our body isn't going to be able to tolerate the activities that maybe it used to. And even over a few days, okay? So shoulder pop hurts to go overhead, and we brace it and we don't do anything for an extended period of time. At no point during that time is it going to get easier to go overhead if you're not practicing or challenging that range of motion again, okay? So what we don't want to do is we don't want to rest. Now, that term is really general, okay? What we can do is we can just modify the pattern, okay? Or modify the load, right? So how much weight we're lifting, or the intensity, of which CrossFit intensity can mean speed, right? Or dynamicness, right? So Hertz, we'll just keep using shoulder as the example. So pressing overhead, okay? So Hertz, you did a jerk. Dr. Joe likes to say, let's, assess how you feel. There's a little bit of pain, but I think it's okay. We're gonna try it again. That's totally okay, right? You can make that call on your own. Do it again, doesn't feel comfortable. All right, so a few things have to happen now. We've done it a couple times. It's pretty uncomfortable. You're not confident doing the activity, right? Pressing overhead. So usually load and then intensity, and intensity and load are similar terms depending on who's defining them. So we modify those things first. It still doesn't feel too good. All right, so then we keep working our way down the ladder. What do we do next?
Reduce the weight. Maybe we've changed. Let's say if we're still in the middle of a workout, we went from aggressive push jerks at a heavy weight to now we've
maybe push press,
lightened the load and done some push press, maybe even strict press.
Okay.
And what happens if it's still feeling weird?
Yeah, so then we want to, if we're in the workout, right, then at that point we would probably change the movement pattern. We would go to a push-up or something like that, or maybe just an overhead hold or something to that effect. And so what we would do from something that's more long-standing, if we have time to make changes, this is something that's been lingering around, usually we would change the frequency at which we're doing it, so how often we're challenging the movement. Either we do it maybe a little bit more, really light as a warm-up, or we kind of take it away for a short amount of time to give the body a chance to calm down, right? Because it could just be the pattern, right? It hurts when you just go overhead. All right, so we're not going to rest. We're still going to we still have 75% of a body that works. We still have other arms that work and legs.
We just might not do max effort handstand push-ups the next day.
Yeah, that's probably a bad idea. And so, so we just modify the specific pattern, and then we keep training as normal everywhere else, right? And that's the key, because we have, I'm going to use a big term, and you can help me.
I'll make it smaller.
Yeah, it's called interregional dependence, basically meaning when we stay active in other regions of the body, we have an improved healing response time, or healing is a relative word, an improved symptom response time in the affected joint or the affected region.
I got it. Here's how you explain it. If you have a boo-boo on your shoulder, you can still do exercise with your legs and other shoulder. So boo-boo here, you still have a lot of other places you can exercise, which really is true though. So a lot of people, including myself back in the day, I used to get a tweaky shoulder every once in a while, and I would just not work out for a few days. I'd do nothing. And it's so funny because when I would come back, everything would hurt, not just my shoulder, because I hadn't done anything for a long time. So what CJ's saying is make sure you keep moving. Even if you're not, let's say, hammering that one shoulder that might be nagging you, you can probably reduce the load, reduce the range of motion, things like that, reduce the speed or intensity that you're doing things. But you can also still be doing other things. Chances are I can probably still back squat or front squat. Or maybe do a front squat like this with my arms crossed, as long as it doesn't cause pain. Is that a good explanation? Yep. So boo-boo here, you can still work out everywhere else.
Nailed it.
With that in mind, we want to make sure we're staying active. Dr. Joe, what is number 4? Step number 4, I'm injured, owie, owie, boo-boo on my shoulder, help.
So step number 4 is stay consistent and confident. Your body is robust and you are resilient. We have evolved and we're made to handle a lot of things. Football, rugby, lifting weights, all of these things take a very large stress that is put onto the body that can be adapted to. Once you have a plan, once you've assessed the situation, you haven't panicked, and you've made the modifications with yourself or a coach, stay consistent and stay confident. There is going to be time during this that you're just going to have to pump the brakes, and as long as you pump the brakes and you do the things that you can tolerate and that are within your scope or things that you can handle, time is on your side. Nature is metal. You will heal, and you will feel a lot better if you stay consistent and stay confident in the process.
So in terms of applying consistency and confidence, again, the consistency is kind of what Dr. CJ and I were talking about, where it's like, I don't just bail on working out for weeks or months or years even because I have a quote unquote bad shoulder, bad back, or something like that. But I also stay confident knowing that in actually exercising, and again, I'm just going to keep going back to the shoulder, in making sure that I continue to move my shoulder, I'm confident knowing that time eventually will cause it to heal, correct?
Right.
Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, it is very peculiar or very, it doesn't usually happen that things don't heal. That is actually would be very odd. So as long as we're stressing an area, and it doesn't even have to be with an overhead pattern if you're having that problem, you stress with a pull, you stress with deadlifts, that's still the shoulder is still involved. All of these things will still acclimate and cause adaptation at the shoulder. With that adaptation, with completed workouts where you aren't hurting at the very end of it, that builds the confidence up, and that consistency is going to be key in just taking small steps forward.
And that was the last thing I wanted to say about consistency. Maybe you guys have some to say about this as well, is with consistency, let's say, hey, man, I want to be consistent. I want to keep working out, but my shoulder's like really bugging me whenever I do heavy barbell work. In order to stay consistent, I know the answer to this, and it seems super obvious. It's like, oh, what should I do to stay consistent? I can't do the heavy barbell work. I might as well not work out. We can still stay consistent and find something for the shoulder to do that doesn't cause lots of pain.
Correct.
How do we find out where that is?
You need to find out what heavy is for you and then take steps back from that. As few steps back as you can tolerate, because the further we get away from that specific stress that you're trying to put onto the shoulder, the more we're going to have to walk back towards that. So if you can find an entry point where you can train, not pain-free because that intensity level is usually very low, if you can find it where it's tolerable, that is a good spot to be. And kind of what you're saying is that a lot of people just avoid it because they think that they're going to make things worse if they train and it continues to hurt. But we know that that's usually not the case. Pain is usually not very much so immediately related to that injury that is currently happening. But I will say, step number 5 that we're going to go over is if you have to use a PVC pipe to accomplish that specific movement,
It's better than putting it in a
totally
sling and
fine.
saving.
Yes,
Yep,
absolutely.
awesome. All right, Dr. CJ, let's bring it home. What is step number 5?
Yeah. Number 5, one that I struggle with, and I think everyone does, is you have to leave your ego at the door. And so what that means is, really hitting on what Joe talked about, is we have to start taking steps back from what we want to do. So we'll keep with the shoulder, heavy jerks. Heavy jerks hurt. Okay, so we have to take steps down to figure it out. Joe talks about finding the entry point at which you can accomplish a similar pattern or the same pattern with little pain, and we'll talk about why little pain is appropriate in a second, but it's okay to do less. And that's the hardest thing to do, especially for a higher level athlete or someone who's very competitive.
I'm an RX athlete. I'm going to do the RX weight at the RX, right? Come on.
Right, 100%. And so a lot of the time that's okay. And it's like we said, you're going to get better because the body heals itself in a very short amount of time. It's biologically designed to do that. It's really, really good. And so, but sometimes we have to take steps back to give it a chance. Okay, and we'll talk about how pain plays a role in that. If every time we train, we work into high amounts of pain, then we're basically restarting the clock. Okay, we're not re-injuring ourselves. This isn't we're causing more damage. I don't like to think of it like that, but think of it as just starting over from the healing process. Okay, and so every time we work into high amounts of pain, we have to get it to calm back down, and we kind of have to restart this recovery process. But when we're working into low amounts of pain, usually, like Joe said, that's just enough stress to create adaptation within the joint or the area of the body that might be affected. So we want to hit what we call a minimum effective dose. Okay, and a lot of people listening would have heard that term when it comes to strength training.
Right. If I'm trying to build my biceps, I don't want to go grab a 5-pound dumbbell and do 3 bicep curls, and then say, Coach, I do bicep curls every single day and they never get any bigger, right? We need to have a minimum effective dose to actually see the gains that we're looking for. In this case, the gains are helping us rehabilitate from an injury.
Sure. And so we do that for a couple reasons, right? We reach this minimum effective dose because it improves our ability to create adaptation within the tissue if we actually have a structural injury. What it also does is it improves our tolerance to the movement pattern. So if we avoid pressing overhead or pressing overhead heavy, no point where we're just going to be able to do it sporadically. We have to progress and build to that. So a couple things, hypothetically, or our theory is that we're teaching ourselves to readapt to the movement pattern, because once we have pain, our body is designed to be sensitive to that movement pattern. That's how it protects ourselves.
It wants to prevent us from doing the thing that,
Exactly.
we kind of feel bad at this, we don't want that anymore.
Right, and so that's a very appropriate thing to happen for an extent, right? And so to get it to start working its way down, we have to work into that discomfort. And if we avoid the discomfort completely, then nothing happens, okay? And so we'll bring it back to leaving your ego at the door. You want to jerk 300. At some point, if that hurts, we go to 270. Still painful, we go to 240. Still painful, we go to 200. That's okay. Great. I know it's 60% or 2/3 of what you were what you had overhead before, but it's a starting point and it's totally fine.
What if even the barbell hurts? Like, what if we're talking about an injury where you're like, hey man, I really think I messed something up.
Sure.
Should I immediately go get surgery on my shoulder? Like, what would I do to find that minimum effective dose?
Yeah. It's a whole another rabbit hole here. We're trying not to dive too far into it, but like we talked about before, what modifications can we make, right? Maybe just anything pressing overhead has to be out. That's okay. Horizontal pressing or horizontal pulling is usually our go-to specific to that because, like Joe said, it stresses the shoulder without causing that high amplitude of pain response. Okay, so we're still getting blood flow. We're still challenging, the joint to just move through space, which promotes healing and promotes symptom reduction, right? And so it basically improves our tolerance to activity. And so, and that might be where we are.
So I hope that you liked this video. These are 5 really effective steps that are going to help you recover from injury. So whether you just got an injury now, or you're someone that tends to have these nagging things pop up, or maybe you're a coach, maybe you're someone who's expecting to get injured when you do CrossFit. I wouldn't go in with that expectations, but everyone gets injured. We all get injured at some point. If you would like a free PDF checklist of 5 things that you can do to prevent injury, click the link below in the description or the top comment, or just go to WODprep.com/injury, and you can download that completely free. Also, down below, we're going to include a couple links if you would like to work with our PT coaching team. So work with one of these doctors on the WODprep team. There's a link where you can apply to work with them below, where they will help you and walk you, literally hold your hand step by step through this process of helping you get back to 100% and beyond in your training, injury and pain free. I hope that you like this video. Leave a comment below to let us know which of the 5 steps you struggle with the most. Is it leaving your ego at the door? Is it panic? What is it? Leave that in the comments below, and we will see you in the next video.